Conlon, thank you for joining me in the trenches again.
Nice to be back, Jeremy. Thanks for asking me. It's a difficult one for most people. So many different schools of thought on what happened and, how things played out on that day. So, and what we've been told.
Can you remember what you were doing on 9/11?
Yes. I was at work. I didn't actually get to watch the events unfold. It was on a radio. And to be honest, I'd never heard of the World Trade Center, so that was not in my consciousness at that time. But when it unfolded and when I got home from work and seen the destruction of the towers, etc., it was just, absolutely unbelievable.
Did you think at the time that it was a cover-up? I mean, I thought it was exactly what we were told. I thought it was, these Muslims who were headed up by this brown guy with a beard in a cave with a Nokia 3310 somewhere in the Middle East, and he orchestrated this entire thing. And I believed it for years and years and years.
Yeah. Well, for me, I didn't question it until about 2003. I had heard rumblings. I think there was something on Channel 4 in the UK to do with the Pentagon and Thierry Mason. But I didn't question it much more than that. It was around about 2003-04 after listening to an early internet radio show called Black Op Radio. And that's what sort of got my interest. I should have known better, really, because I would have considered myself quite a sceptic back then, because back in 1988, that catapulted me into the JFK assassination and questioning that after watching the Men Who Killed Kennedy documentary that was aired in the UK. So that got me questioning other assassinations. So, and with Diana as well, I questioned that. So I was a little bit miffed why I didn't question 9/11. I think it may have been the shock and awe of the whole event, I think.
It was incredible, though, wasn't it? I mean,
yeah.
If you watch it now, it still is incredible.
Yeah, it is. It is so shocking. I think there must have been a level, of trauma, for a lot of people, seeing that. I remember feeling quite uneasy about it in the evening and recorded, some of the news coverage through the night. So I felt uneasy about it back then.
Mark, when did you start getting red-pilled? Did you have a Damascus moment, or was it just a gradual evolution of your thought processes?
It was I think it was around 1988 after watching that Men Who Killed Kennedy, because I think I was about 17 years of age when it aired, and it actually aired in the October of 1988, and that really sort of gave me a bit of a kick up the ass, really, because I remember thinking back then, if they can kill the president and cover it up for 25 years as it was back then who among us is safe if they can do that? And they did it in front of, a lot of people, riding in a car down the street. It's like, it was just truly the power they had to do that and cover it up for that amount of time, and still covering it up,
I'm wondering why it is that many people simply don't want to even entertain the idea of an alternative explanation.
Yeah, I think for some people, I look at it, there's levels of consciousness, really, and it depends, sort of where you're at on that journey. I mean, for some people, things that may be completely obvious to us after waking up, if you want to use that term, is, things just stand out now like a sore thumb. When you see something, you can see the playbook. So I think for people, if they're on that element of having a little bit of scepticism and getting into questioning official narratives, I think that's quite a good for them, and it can help expand their consciousness and raise that into questioning and noticing when we're being told lies or untruths, really, which seems the order of the day these days.
Why do you think 9/11 is so important?
For me, I think there was just to go back, there's two events where I noticed what I would call a massive energy shift, and that was the Princess Diana and also assassination, and the other one was 9/11. Two huge events, and something changed with the energy. You could act, it was so palpable, you could feel it, the absolute change. And obviously, on the back of 9/11, we had the Patriot Act, we had laws changed in the UK. Everything was tightened up, and what followed, obviously, with 7/7 as well, and some of the other events that happened in Europe. It changed a lot. It was like the trigger to a cascade of things happening, really. And the war on terror, yeah. We got embroiled in that. And, people protested that, but I think the protesting was a bit different to what perhaps, where my mindset was with it at that time.
A lot of people ask the question, what is the point of covering up 9/11?
Oh, well, I don't think I think they obviously plan a cover-up in advance of when they're going to do these events. But obviously these events are used to further the agenda, which is more clamping down, draconian measures, which we're seeing now. It's truly unbelievable in the UK. These measures that what's being rolled out, it is very draconian. For example, my BitChute channel, nobody can see it in the UK, yet laws were, brought in, and so they say to protect children, but my channel's been completely censored in the UK. So, to some degree, it's furthered many agendas all around the world, I would think.
So your Substack has focused quite a lot on the planes themselves, and more specifically, no planes.
I just want to preface something regarding no planes and planes. Just to begin with is, if you're going to say to somebody there was no planes involved on 9/11, then...
Yeah, they'll laugh at you.
Yeah, they'll laugh at you, And so I came across the no planes around about 2006. It was more prevalent at the Shanksville site and Pentagon. It was more acceptable, let's put it that way, at that time. But when it sort of moved over around about 2004-05 to the New York events, it became unacceptable about the planes. And I think the actual term, no planes is very, when you say that to people, they have such a wide interpretation about it. They'll either think, several schools of thought involved in that. They'll say it's video fakery, that there was no planes at all, so all the witnesses were fake. And they'll say nobody's seen a plane in the sky. Then we've got the missile or missiles that were used. We've got the 3D volumetric image projection stealth technology, which is something that I've been heavily researching behind and really going in to find out what happened to the actual planes, because there was actual planes that took off, but we don't know where they went. They didn't go to the four named targets, and there's a lot of telemetry data that's been withheld, that's come out over the years, which proves that the four planes were still airborne at the time of the alleged crashes. So it's very wide interpretation. Now,
Yeah, hold on. So what you're saying, just for clarity, Mark, is that when someone says there were no planes, it's a little bit of an incorrect statement. What you're saying is that there were planes, but we need to be accurate about what we mean.
Yeah. Sorry about the pun, but early on it all got hijacked, that actual part of that movement, So you had films like September Clues that came out, and they pushed and promoted that the planes were inserted into the video footage, and all the videographers involved, like Jennifer Spell, were all in on it, and they faked their videos. So this is what got me actually active in publishing research into this, these scenarios that were being put forward in films like September Clues. You had Ace Baker pushing, it's very similar to what Simon Shack pushed in his film. Now, as soon as you mention no planes, the conditioning has been the go-to is September Clues, CGI footage, and the Great American Psy Opera, which is Ace Baker's film. Where you're on the fringe is in the stealth technology. Now, from my research that I've done, which I started publishing in 2013, I can categorically prove points in both of Ace Baker's film and Simon Shack's film that there is disinformation contained in that film, which is very misleading, very clever editing to steer the viewer in a certain direction with no planes. And in my opinion, that has been done to cover up some technology that was used on 9/11, which is let me just say this, is a very real and present danger in the future. And it has to be kept secret. So this is something that I've been researching for a long time, not just the no planes and, looking at what's being proposed in people's films, but also the real evidence with the planes to prove that there was no planes, but there was something else used to create the plane illusions. And I can tell you now, it was not video fakery or CGI planes. And I've methodically gone through that to prove that. But there's a cover-up happening to cover up this technology, which, in my opinion, the elite or powers that be, call them what you will most likely use again. They've probably been using it on and off in other areas, whether it's UFO sightings, to use later on in a Project Bluebeam style event. But the thing is, it has to be covered up and kept covered up, this technology. Well, I'll just establish some facts for, which is what we went over, and I'll try and go through this quite quickly because I want to get onto the actual technology and perhaps the cover up of what's at work. So an established fact is none of the 4 plane crashes activated an ELT. Now, an ELT is an emergency locator transmission or transmitter. They're fitted in 767s and 757s and small aircrafts. Now, what's unique in a 767 and 757s is you cannot manually activate an ELT. So what I mean by that is it won't go off early because of the parameter settings. So what happened with Flight 11 and Flight 175, there was 2 ELTs registered that the authorities have tried to account to Flight 11 and Flight 175. Now, this is impossible because Flight 11's ELT went off 2 minutes too early and Flight 175's went off 4 minutes too early before the crashes. So this is an impossibility. But what I can say is, on record in the NTSB reports, they do not report an ELT for any of the 4 flights going off at the time of the crashes. Not one. It's not recorded in there. And they should have gone off and emitted this beacon to find the plane. Now,
And this is official.
this is absolutely official. It's in their own documents. They've even got one of their expert witnesses, which, I've published about, articles about this. So that's one of the areas to prove that none of the 4 planes crashed at the named targets. So that's just an area. So, these are fitted in the back, in the tail section. Now, normally with a plane crash, your tail sections they break off. That's why they're fitted up in that area. So in enlarged Boeing 767, that's where they sort of be located. Now, I'll just flick through this. There's the document, here. It's explaining. Again, this is a commission-sensitive document. Not all these were released at the time, but there was interviews conducted part of the investigation, and they actually tell you from Paul Thumser, who was an ex-pilot, an operations manager. He said an ELT locator transmission cannot be triggered by a pilot in a 767, and this is on record. So people don't know these facts. You see.
Okay, but before you go any further, Mark, so I just want to make sure that I'm following.
Yeah.
The 767s are not imaginary. Those were real planes. They did fly, but it doesn't appear that they flew into the buildings at this stage.
That's correct, yeah. Now, that is established. We have many areas of data to establish the takeoff times. Now, there's discrepancies with that because, as I allude in a lot of my articles, there's a lot of military drills going on 9/11, and you do have evidence of planes being what I'll call duplicated. So an example might be Flight 175. The official story says it took off at 8:14. The Bureau of Transportation Statistics, which gets its data through the ACARs. So when a plane takes off, just to preface this piece of information, there's a sensor that records the data through ACARs that says that the wheels have left the ground, they've left contact with the ground. So that's all recorded. Everything on the plane is recorded, its performance with ACARs data. So you can glean a lot of information from the ACARs data, which again didn't come out, wasn't released straight away. It come out many years later. So another example is Flight 93. They say it took off at 8:42. Bureau of Transportation Statistics shows it took off at 8:28. So you've got these inconsistencies and discrepancies. Now, I've put all these into articles to make it easy for people to follow in a lot of my research articles. So, again, we've got Flight 11 not taking off in the Bureau of Transportation Statistics, and we've also got Flight 77 not taking off in the Bureau of Transportation Statistics. It's quite mad, isn't it, that you've got all this data, and a lot of people don't know about this data, that it exists.
It's been covered up, that's why.
Yeah. Now, just to move on to Flight 11, we're told crashed into the North Tower at 8:46, but we have NORAD recordings giving precise lat-long coordinates showing that Flight 11 was 5.77 miles past the North Tower on 9/11. So this is after it's crashed, it's flown past the towers. And there's reports in the NORAD, you can listen to the recordings, and it says it's on the way to Washington. Here's a recording that I made edited from the NORAD tapes and transcripts, where it tells you that Flight 11 is still airborne, it's on its way to Washington.
Military Boston Center. Just had a report that American 11 is still in the air and it's on its way heading towards Washington.
Okay, American 11 is still in the air?
Yes,
on its way towards Washington?
there was evidently another aircraft that hit the tower. That's the latest report we have.
Okay.
I'm going to try to confirm an ID for you, but I would assume he's somewhere over either New Jersey or somewhere further south.
Okay, so American 11 isn't the hijack at all then, right?
No, he is a hijack.
American 11 is a hijack?
Yes.
And he's going into Washington?
This could be a third aircraft.
People have tried to make out that that's a phantom plane, that they apparently were going to send fighter jets to, which they did. But they've tried in the commission to repivot that to say it was for Flight 77 and Flight 93. They can't make their minds up. They knew they had a problem with Flight 11 because of this evidence. So they had to repivot the story to make out that the fighter jets that were sent to track down 11 were actually sent for 77. Then it changed to Flight 93.
So they changed the story.
They changed the story, yes. But there's the timeline of that story to say when Flight 77 was classed as a hijack doesn't fit this story's timeline. So they were actually trying to track down Flight 11. Now, as it continues in the recording, it gives you a tail number for Flight 11 as well. So they not only give you the long coordinates, which places it after flying past the Twin Towers by 5.77 miles, and they say it's on the way to Washington, they also give you the tail number for Flight 11.
But would people not have seen the plane or the planes?
They may have done, but who would know? If you're talking about people on the ground, they would not perhaps know that is Flight 11. They're not going to know. They might just be like a plane flying through the sky, you know. Joe
Yeah, and not
Public's
take
not
much
going to
notice
really.
of it.
So we have the same for United 175. That was still airborne. This is an established fact, again, through telemetry data, that Flight 175 was picked up and routed messages through ground stations to do with the ACARS, which is the addressing and reporting system messaging, which is sent to the aircrafts, and they have uplinks and downlinks. Now, if a plane's over a certain part of the country, the messages are routed through the nearest station, ground station, ACARS ground station, to that plane. Okay, so it gives you a bit of insight to where the plane would have been. So with Flight 175, as I'm going to show now, it received some ACARS messages at 8:59, and it was routed through Harrisburg, which is nowhere near New York. Now, at the time, Flight 175 would have been here. And the ground station is here, that's picking up where it's routed through. So that is a major anomaly, because it should have been routed.
Wait. So it changed course.
Well, we're told that United 175 did this turn and flew back to the Twin Towers. What seems to have happened is it didn't make the turn and flew straight, continued in its path, and was receiving ACARS messages over in Harrisburg and Pittsburgh, which is, nowhere near New York. Now, there is a bit of a radius on the ACARS, but not enough to be sending and routing messages through the nearest ground station to the aircraft.
So where was it heading?
So that's a good question. That's something I'm trying to establish with that. So I don't know for definite where it was heading. All I know is it wasn't heading for New York. I'm trying not to be too speculative with this flight. There's other flights I can tell you exactly where they was heading. But
this one you're not sure.
This one, all I know is it's still airborne. It's 154 miles away when it received that ACARS message in Harrisburg. Now, it also received at 9:03 a message which was routed through Pittsburgh. Now, Pittsburgh is quite a considerable distance from New York. Now, the planes crashed at this point over here, and yet ACARS messages are being sent to the aircraft over here.
Was this at the same time period?
Yeah. In fact, if you're going by the official timeline of when Flight 175 crashed, it's actually the message is sent, I think something like 5 or 6, 7 seconds after the planes crashed. But it doesn't end there with Flight 175 because, okay, I'll just start that again. Now, Pittsburgh, that was 315 miles away from where Flight 175 should have been crashing at the South Tower at 9:03. Again, that's a considerable distance, which you can see in the Google Earth. So,
Mark, but you know that by now somebody will ask, okay, but there were people on board. Isn't that fairly easy to track?
Yeah, well, we've got a lot of problems with the people on board, if you want me to go there with that. But let's look at Flight 93, for example, with people on board. And I'll come back to 175 with the passengers. Regarding Flight 93, we've got Mark Bingham, who was said to be on that flight. Now, I've done extensive research into this just to make this clear. He was not listed on the manifest. He was not listed. And plus, in the official documents, they actually say he wasn't assigned a seat number on Flight 93. So what happened? See, I can't say what happened to him. All I can tell you is in the official documents that that were released, declassified, there's information telling you that Mark Bingham didn't get that plane. They've tried to explain that he didn't get on that plane, that he got on that plane he was flying on his mum's employee pass or her sister's employee pass. Now, I'm in touch with a United Airlines flight attendant who flew around that time, who worked for United. And she tells me, if you're not on that manifest, you're not on that plane. Plus, we got this other evidence admitted that he didn't have a seat number, because they will not get that plane off the ground until that manifest is completed properly, because it has to take into account all sorts of information to do with the passenger, the luggage, the weight, everything. Everything's taken into account.
Ignore the passengers. What about the pilot? I mean, isn't that public knowledge?
Well, again, if you look at Flight 93, you've got a fueler named Anthony Mazza, who was fueling Flight 93. And when he gets on board to hand the docket and the documentation to get to the co-pilot, he didn't recognise the co-pilot who was shown on the news. And he didn't recognise the captain. So he took it upon himself to contact the FBI. Again, this is all admitted in documents. It's all on my research Substack site. So who are them?
So
who was that person?
So there could have been a bait and switch with the pilot and co-pilot.
Yeah, it could have been. There could have been. Again, there was a lot of military exercises taking place, but again, you have duplicate flights happening, which it's even worse with Flight 93, because you have two lots of evidence showing that Flight 93 is over Champaign, Illinois, near Chicago, and you also have it 44 miles past the crash site in Pittsburgh, in Pennsylvania, in Shanksville. It's heading towards Washington. So you have two flights giving two lots of data. It's as if the air traffic control was seeing Flight 93 over in Pittsburgh, but the ACARS and radar was showing that it was over in Champaign, Illinois. Now, that's backed up that it was in Champaign, Illinois, because of Colonel Marr. He's on record as saying that they observed, he was told, somebody came in and told him, it's all in his account, that Flight 93 was circling over Chicago, and they didn't know whether it was coming into land or why it was circling. They didn't know if it was something to do with the attack. So you've got all this information that, is contained in these documents, and it paints a very, very different picture to just there's no planes. My area is that there was some planes that went to different places. They didn't go to the targets. But what we were seeing, or we seen in the second videos, was not Flight 175.
Then what was it?
Well, again, it's back to the contention that you have different schools of thought. So some people, as I recently heard the other night on a group, Richard Gage getting involved, saying it was a military plane, yet I can prove it's not a military plane, because military planes don't have their wings disappearing in video footage, not just one, but photographs. So that's an odd anomaly to have. You see, we've also got the impossible speed of the plane, travelling at 700 feet at 586 miles per hour, which is impossible. But people will argue...
Yeah, it'll break apart.
It will break apart. And there's numerous pilots that I've got in my presentation who will tell you it'll break apart. It's physically impossible. That's where Richard Gage said, it's a military plane, because Jeff Hill rang Boeing. And she said, she's on record, Leslie Hazard, that you can't do it at that. The plane wouldn't go that fast. That because of the density of the air will take the wings off, takes the engine off. And the best example for this is actually Flight 587 that crashed in New York or Queens in November 2001. Now, that is a perfect example, that crash, that a plane cannot go through the dense air with its VMO limitations well above those. So it's physically impossible. And we also have the same with the crash dynamics. When you look at the videos of Flight 175, the crash dynamics is non-existent. Again, we have people saying, well, the plane would have gone in, but there's absolutely no resistance. There's no collision. There's no proper collision that you would have. The fuel is stored in the wings on a plane, and there's no ignition of that happening. And that's very strange. The tail section doesn't break off. And, again, on another group, they said, well, there was debris. Now, none of the debris, now again, this is on record, the NTSB, none of the plane debris that was found at any of the sites, there's no chain of custody, there's no inventory of it, and it was never ever matched to any of the serial numbers of the four planes.
They'll talk about that engine. They'll talk about that engine that was found a few blocks away or something.
Yeah, that was found on Murray Street, wasn't it? There's a lot of contention about that engine. Some people believe that it is the engine. I have been looking into that. There is some anomalies with it. It did bounce off a building, collided with the building. Something exited the building. But whether, again, it's on record that you can't, there's no serial number being tracked back to Flight 175. They've not done that. There's no inventory. There's no chain of custody to prove. The government never proved that engine belonged to that plane. And there's a good reason for that, because that plane was nowhere near the target. And there was certainly no ELT to suggest that that plane crashed into that target. Now, if you just want to mention the some other evidence to do with Flight 175 is what it's called the Dulles Control Centre radar. Now, this showed that Flight 175 flew past the South Tower, and it was captured at 9:07 on that radar data, and it was over Connecticut. Now, again, this is all in the telemetry data, which I've shown on the screen there with the coordinates. And it was flying at 31,000 feet, which is not, that plane is well above the towers. And it's captured over at 9:07 in the morning, doing 31,000 feet and over Connecticut. Now, this information particularly, this is new information, which we discovered. This totally backs up what was seen and broadcast on MSNBC at 10:25 live, when they showed something called Flight Aware, and they hover over the planes, and it shows you that Flight 175 is over Connecticut.
We've just received word that all inbound international flights to the United States are being diverted to Canada. The government will not allow them to land here in the U.S. They are being diverted to Canada. As we've been reporting, all airports in the U.S. have shut down departures. We were watching on our Flight Explorer. I don't know if we can put it on the air right now. This is a system in which we can actually look at the number of airplanes in the air. Normally, this would be dotted with little blue airplane figures. Look at how few we're looking. It looks like only 3 over the immediate New York City metropolitan area. Just a handful. Airplanes in the air are being allowed to land at their destinations, and then that is it. Now, keep in mind, the planes you're looking at here are only those that are participating in the FAA radar system, airliners. This does not include anybody in a small Cessna or a small plane who might be flying what's called VFR traffic, where they're just flying below the commercial traffic. But again, these represent commercial airplanes, or airplanes that are participating in the FAA system, just a handful in the skies over the Northeast right now. Greg, Chris?
Watching continuing NBC News coverage on MSNBC of a series of apparent terrorist attacks on.
And there you go.
Gee, now you'll struggle to find that online.
It's still online, just about. But this piece of evidence backs up the other piece of evidence I've just shown you, which was the official DCC radar showing that Flight 175 is over Connecticut. This absolutely backs that up. So you've got one Flight 175 over Connecticut, and you've got the ACARS data communicating with the plane over in Harrisburg and Pittsburgh, which is in totally the other direction. It's impossible.
Do you think the pilots knew what was going on? Were they oblivious? Were they in on it?
Well, there are some pilots which are connected to the military who were flying that day, but that's difficult to say. I don't know for definite regarding the pilots. And just quickly to go back to the passengers with Flight 11, there's official information showing reservations that were cancelled for Flight 11. Okay. And yet these passengers were alleged to have been on Flight 11. There's no information proving they booked back on the flight. And apparently they found their DNA at the site. So how can you have official American Airlines information showing that there's passengers who cancelled their reservations and didn't rebook onto that flight? And that's the same. We've got that again with Flight 77 as well. So there's a lot of people. There's some good people doing work on that, who, including myself, I've done quite a bit to do with the passengers, which is all on my Substack. We've got as if aliases were being prepared as well by what they call it photographic EXIF data, which is dated before 9/11, which is impossible with the obituaries, which is highly, highly strange. Plus, you've got with Flight 175, you've got 5 passengers' names who are not on the flight manifest. So There's something very strange. Again, I've looked into the Victim Compensations Fund, and there's a lot of anomalies with that, with the numbers who who were given payments from the fund. There was a private litigation brought, but the numbers don't add up with the people who brought the private litigation and the people who were paid out by the Victim Compensation Fund. So, again, there's a lot of anomalies with the passengers. Just to show you there, that's off the Flight Aware. And that information that's shown on there is identical to the schedule of Flight 175. And if you go into the BTS, there's no other Flight 170. There's Flight 175, but there's nothing that matches that 5. So I'll just quickly move on to American Airlines. You've got that went off radar for 18 minutes. Now, again, we've got evidence. Now, this evidence, a lot's come out in the last few years that we've managed to collate. So this proves that this plane did not turn round and fly back to Washington. Didn't turn on the Kentucky and Ohio border. It was actually on radar, on the DCC radar, captured flying over to Missouri and Kansas City. Now, there's a lot of evidence to support this, to support the radar information. So this is the plotted radar coordinates showing that Flight 77, American Airlines, flew on into Kentucky, all the way over into Missouri and over into Kansas. Now, again, this come out for Freedom of Information Act, this information, which people can go to National Archives and find this stuff themselves. I've published research surrounding this. I've gone through transcripts where, again, this is an official document showing transcripts at 1429. So this is at 1029. Now remember, the Pentagon was hit apparently at 9:37. Now, they're still tracking this guy who they say is American 77. How do we get tracking over Missouri? So they know he's over Missouri. They know he didn't turn around and fly back to Washington. So, again, we've got mention to about tracking him over Missouri. This is at 10:31. All official information. And again, at 10:38, we've got Flight 77 is in Kansas area, heading westbound. And again, 10:40, they're saying it's over in the ZKC, which is, again, that's Kansas City airspace, and still airborne. And again, at 10:41. So there's a lot of official evidence there, and we also have what was shown on CNN, which showed that the flight didn't turn round. It was still in green, which means its transponder was still on at that point. And this was shown the day after on CNN. So this is Flight Aware again, totally contradicting the official narrative. So I'll just play this loop, shows you the flight which I made. What you're looking at here is it's about to turn and then it jumps, which means it did not make the turn. It's actually following that radar path. So whoever let this slip on CNN, I would think got a bit of a bad rap.
Yeah, but a bunch of anomalies happened on the day. Remember that BBC, was it Sky or BBC footage where they announced the second tower going down, I think like 20 minutes before it went down?
Oh, yeah, which didn't register next to nothing seismic reading. Again, that's pushed as a controlled demolition. People need to look at the evidence and go and do due diligence and look at the seismic readings, which are 0.6. That's impossible. No SRP wave in the seismic reading. Again, that's not anything kinetic. That's destroyed that building. There's something else at work, and people need to really understand that. that there was a lot of technology going on 9/11, and it's being covered up. And unfortunately, it's being covered up by the vast majority of the truth movement. Sorry to say that, but that's the truth.
Infiltration.
Absolutely. And they're making a lot of money doing it as well. So people are actually paying for a cover-up.
Both planes took off, but both planes didn't go in the direction that we were told. They went their own way, and the data shows this.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
All right.
I can prove it from their own documents.
Yeah. And you say that there are weird anomalies with the military stuff that was happening on the same day.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, if you look at some of the military exercises, I mean, they did have one planned in June 02, which is Amalgam Virgo 02, and that involved having real Delta Airlines employees, and it had FBI, I think, as hijackers and actors as passengers. So there's also other military exercises where they've got simulated cell phone calls involved in the training exercise, hijacking involving simulated phone calls.
And I mean, we're only talking about the two towers here. We're not even talking about the Pentagon and what's the name? The other location.
Shanksville.
Yes,
Yeah,
we aren't even talking about that. We're just talking about the two towers. That's it.
Yeah. Which again,
and I mean, it stands to reason that if you're going to question what hit the Pentagon and what happened in Shanksville, you should also be asking what happened with the towers.
Yeah, the towers is very important because the second flight was beamed all over the world. That's what actually conditioned people regarding the planes. And obviously the news coverage was on every channel in every country, I should think. Well, from what I know.
And Mark, if you look at the still frames of the official footage, which anybody can find on YouTube,
yeah,
and you break it apart into images, and you watch the plane actually going into the building, it looks like a cartoon. I mean, it just vanishes without any resistance. And the amount of mental gymnastics that goes on from people trying to explain that, well, this is what happens when it's going at that speed, and the building is effectively made from paper. I mean, it's so thin, and it's just, there's no resistance whatsoever. But it's so blatantly obvious that the visuals don't look right. The plane is going at a constant speed, which also doesn't look right. It doesn't even slow down.
Yeah,
the whole thing doesn't make any sense.
No, the physics of it is totally off. I know, again, this is a big contention in the truth movement. They contend, I'm going to show you why it's not military planes, which is being pushed at the moment with the remote-controlled planes. That is actually a cover story, so you don't look at the technology that was involved to produce those planes. Well, I'll just mention about Flight 93 because it's just, as I'm going through this presentation. Yeah, so, yeah, that had the same with the ACARS. It showed it was over Champaign, Illinois, which is 500 miles away from Pittsburgh. Like I said, Colonel Mars on record. He's in about United 93 circling over Chicago. Yet again, this is where we have Flight 93 should have been here, the crash, yet it's registering ACARS messages over here. We even have ACARS messages that chime in the cockpit of the aircraft after it has allegedly crashed and is no more. It sets off a sound to say that the message has been received. This is, again, that's impossible. That couldn't happen if the planes crashed. But what we're looking at now is Colonel Mars' testimony or account on a commission-sensitive document, which was unclassified. So he admits it was circling over Chicago, which is nowhere near Pittsburgh. I'll skip over that one. Plus, we have the air traffic controllers now. They're saying it's 15 miles past the crash site of Shanksville. So it flew further on. How can this be when we got the plane and the A cars over in Champaign, Illinois? Again, this is spoken about on the in the documents to do with the transcripts from the air traffic control. Again, it's listed the position coordinates, which people can go and put these coordinates into Google Earth and you will find the same findings of what I've found. Again, this has come from a commission-sensitive document. This shows you the last lat-long coordinates, showing it's 44 miles past the crash site. We also have Linda Justice, who shows that the plane is going to Hagerstown, which is 69 miles past the crash site. So this is giving us some indication of where this other Flight 93 is heading. So Hagerstown is 69 miles past the crash site, as you can see there. So it's heading towards Washington. Now, there was a change of flight plan. Now, the commission tripped themselves up here because they didn't want to say it was the hijackers that done this, or alleged hijackers. But again, this is on record on CNN, which was broadcast at 5 o'clock on the day.
And then disappeared off the radar screens right here outside of the Pittsburgh area, a place called Shanksville. We don't know what happened there. What's kind of odd about this one, Joey, is that at some point after flying past Pittsburgh, the pilot apparently radioed and changed his destination to DCA, which is Ronald Reagan National Airport. Unclear what that means. Now, let me just kind of put this all onto one graphic, if you.
There you go. Again, it's mentioned in Dateline.
He was right. Dateline obtained radar data showing the path of United Flight 93. A little more than an hour into the flight, it makes a sharp turn off course near Cleveland, Ohio. Radio communication is switched off. Dateline has also been able to confirm that a new flight plan was filed from on board, perhaps by a fourth hijacker, identified today as a pilot. Destination, Reagan International Airport. The plane was now on a direct course for Washington, D.C.
So, again, there's numerous reports. Now, there's some evidence to show that Flight 93 actually landed at Reagan National Airport at 10:28. So, again, this was put on this Flight Aware. Flight Aware. So this was confirming it's landing at 10:28 as it was heading to Washington. We also have from an Excel spreadsheet from Reagan National showing it landed at 10:28. Again, this just talks about ELTs there. So this slide shouldn't be there, so you might want to edit that one out. So it leads you to this. So planes that are still airborne after the alleged crashes, stands to reason you're not going to have any ELTs activated, which is, again, officially in the NTSB. So as I flick to the next part of what you asked about, so none of the named planes hit the 4 named targets. What did we see crashing into the South Tower? Now, this is a big question. This is a very contentious area of, research. Causes a lot of arguments. So there's some schools of thought which I mentioned earlier. So we have remote controlled planes, we have missiles, we have CGI and video fakery, inserted planes. We've got 3D volumetric image projection, which people may not be too aware of, which is something that I've been involved with, which we covered in the 9/11 Alchemy film. But I'm just going to go to some established facts. So flight data shows that the planes were travelling at impossible speeds for both 767s and 757s, below 1,000 feet. Now, as I said earlier, Boeing are on record when Jeff Hill spoke to both Laurie Bechtold and Leslie Hazard, So, and these are work at Boeing, and Leslie's an engineer. We also have a lack of Newtonian physics observed in the second plane video, which is very, very strange. So, as I said earlier, the best example of impossible speed, because the airframe of that plane would not be able to handle it, was Flight 587. And I'm just going to play this short clip here to explain it better.
587 out of Manhattan, a little over 2 months after, or 2 months and a day after the 9/11 event, same year. Do you remember it crashed? Everybody thought it was another terrorist event. It took off right behind a big Japanese airliner, and it was a little bit too close and had turbulence. That wasn't so much the problem as the less experienced pilot had learned that you make the rudder go to get out of turbulence. And he went, hard left, hard right, hard left, and he tore off the tail of the airplane. Now, that was just with Air Forces. They're at about 2,400 feet, about twice the height of the World Trade Center. Not only that, as the pieces started coming down, the engines were torn off the plane. What does that tell you about a plane supposedly going twice the speed and banking a tight turn into the towers?
It couldn't do it. It couldn't do it.
Exactly. And the best evidence, we have a demonstration right there.
And there you go. Impossible. That's, it's impossible. And just this video here shows just regarding the wings, how they can be, quite fragile.
I've got to tell you, though, that freaks me out still. I don't know how often you fly, but when I fly and I hit a bit of turbulence, I always think about those wings.
Yes. Well, they do have on them, don't step on them because they're that fragile. So, again, it's another area that people need to be aware of. And then as I go on quickly, I'll show you quickly. So this is Boeing, the phone call, just a quick phone call from Jeff Hill, Leslie Hazard.
You have reached the Boeing Company. If you know the number you wish to reach, please hang up, then dial that number. If you wish to continue to hold, your wait time could be up to 5 minutes. Thank you for your call.
Leslie? Hi, Miss Hazard?
Yes.
I was talking to a lady at Boeing yesterday, and she had directed me to you because she said that you have an answer to the question that I was asking.
Oh, I hope so.
Well, the question is, I think it's probably a rather simple one, it has to do with the maximum speed of a 767-200 at 700 feet altitude.
Oh, boy.
Like, I looked all over the internet and everything, and I couldn't find anything about it.
Yeah. For 200?
Pardon me?
For 200?
Yeah, 767-200, yeah.
Yeah, you're right, we don't have much on this.
Like, I had asked some people, and they assumed it would be about 250 miles an hour or something.
That sounds pretty likely because at 35,000 feet, it's 530 miles.
So there's no way that it could be going 500 miles an hour at 700 feet altitude then.
Not that fast.
So just to quickly sum up, we've got another aircraft engineer on record now. He says at sea level it will usually be around 400 miles per hour, which is or 360 knots for heavily built transport airplanes. Now, again, he's talking about here about sea level. So what we mean by that is, if you look at the Flight 175 video, we're talking about under 1,000 feet. with that. So he even says here that you risk a breakup. Even rockets are built with limited strength. So they have to observe speed limitations during certain phases of their climb through the atmosphere to contain the aerodynamic forces on their bodies. So what he's talking about there is where the air is more dense, you cannot travel at cruising speed because of the air and the molecules. It's too dense, they're too spread out. It's the equivalent, if you can imagine, of somebody being pushed through a swimming pool, and you imagine sticking your arms out, you'd be going through like a swimming pool, and that density of this pool compared to when you're outside of the pool. So, and the airframes are not made to travel at those speeds. And there's, you've got all sorts of pilots. There's quite a few in the old pilots for 9/11 Truth. They spoke out about this, about these limitations. I do find it strange that there's other pilots who won't go there with a lot of this information, who they won't look at the ACARs, they won't tell their viewers about the ELTs, they don't talk about the DCC radar, they don't talk about ACARs. They don't, and I'll find that strange because people need information to make, to digest the information and make their own conclusions out of a lot of it. I do worry about what they're not being told. Now, just for the lack of Newtonian physics, I'll just quickly play this. What we're looking at here is the Michael Hezekiah video on the right and the Lou Korchesny video on the left. Now, they're both displaying really unusual impact dynamics. There's no deceleration and there's no breaking off of the tail. There's no explosion when the wings come into contact with the building. Now, people will say, oh, well, it's like going through a shredder. There's fuel. The wings have fuel tanks in them. Now, as soon as you hit steel with that fuel, it is going to ignite. You are going to see something ignite, and you don't. Mark,
adding to what you're saying, the plane is also hitting the building at a diagonal, which means that there's a cross section of various concrete floors and steel frames.
Yeah, that's correct. And so what we're seeing in this video footage, we're seeing not only impossible physics, which we can see in this photograph. I mean, this is just truly, if you were seeing a magic show, David Copperfield, would you believe it? They've cut that woman in half. You are seeing a very clever illusion at work here. Because when that plane's hitting that building, like you say, on an angle, to that angle, you would get some type of shift as it collides with that building. And we're seeing it gliding seamlessly. Very, very, it's very evident. But what I didn't...
And it doesn't even slow down.
No, it doesn't slow down. And incidentally, Matt Estefo has proven now, which again, the truth movement will not accept this, that the building didn't even move. There's no movement in the building when that plane is actually gone through the alleged wall and into the plane. The movement only starts when there's an explosion. Now, you should have had some type of physical object hit that building. You should have had some type of rocking of that building. And that doesn't happen until the plane has disappeared inside the building, which is, again, it's impossible physics. Just to mention, in the last video there was missing wings, which is in the footage. Now, again, people will try and explain this as, oh, well, it's compression and all this. No. The Norday footage, which I did analysis on, they shot their footage with professional camera. And that is why I used it, because there was a lot of other footage from further away which showed the missing wing anomaly. And it's not just in one footage, it's in photographs as well. This was a study I did, which is published on my Substack as well, where the wings disappear and they reappear. Now, this is over 12 frames. The wing disappears for 6 and then comes back for 6. And you will see it here in another video.
It just doesn't look real.
No, it doesn't look real. Now, this is because that footage is quite grainy. People say it's compression. The wing's disappearing and the tail section is because of compression. But it's not compression. Now, this still here is taken from the highest quality of the Nordau footage, and they had a professional camera, which is what I conducted my analysis with, my frame-by-frame analysis, where that wing and tail section is missing for 6 frames, which is quite a lot. Now, that isn't compression. That's not an artifact of compression, video compression. The other thing is, this would explain why people seen a small plane, a large plane, a Cessna, and in some cases people say they saw a missile or a rocket. So let's just strike out the top one. Remote controlled planes do not have wings disappearing, period. They don't. This is trying to be pushed at the moment by select people in the truth movement that this is remote controlled planes. Categorically is not a remote controlled plane. You're looking at remote controlled planes do not have wings disappearing. Missile? Possibly. But can a missile make a plane-shaped hole? Can a missile make a plane-shaped hole? Think about that, because that's what the cartoon physics showed, a plane-shaped hole. Then we have the CGI inserted planes. Now, where this falls down and doesn't sufficiently explain everything is, you have eyewitnesses who've seen a plane. I have a friend in New York who watched the second plane go in seamlessly into the building. So, is he a liar? Are they all liars who filmed these and photographed the plane? That's you have to contend with that. People have to weigh that up. Have you got everybody involved and on board? And just think about this. If they was, how did they track the plane if it wasn't there at all? How would they pan and follow the plane? So it doesn't suggest CGI planes. Plus, what I said with my earlier research into September clues showed a lot of errors. And in my opinion, deliberate errors that were put in that film to lead you away from number 4, which is some type of image projection technology, which sounds very, very Star Trek and sci-fi. But the evidence is there to prove that this technology exists, and it's been there, well, since I can track, that the desire to develop this technology was around the early 90s, in 1991. So I just mentioned this. So this is just a close-up here of the disappearing wing. Is that a Boeing 767? Everybody can get the Nordau footage. Go and buy the DVD. You'll see this. You'll see this anomaly. Now, that is not only captured in the Nordau footage, again, which is on a professional camera, that they were filming the documentary. And I know there's a lot of controversy surrounding those two French brothers. But we also have this particular person from England, he was, named Les Sweeting, and we believe from a lot of the testimonies that thought they saw a small plane or small object or missile, we believe that they were seeing this technology from some angles wasn't so good, which was captured on the cameras and also witnessed by the eyewitnesses.
When we came down here, I see a rocket go into this one. Just watch the rocket drive straight into the centre.
So I'll just put that on again.
When we came down here, I see a rocket go into this one. Just watch the rocket drive straight into the centre.
So what is he observing there? He's saying he's observing a rocket. I mean, that object could pass as looking like a rocket. But if you look at the Lou Chesney video as well, compared to the Norday, there's no wing at all there. So what is this object? Again, Lou Chesney was filming on beta recording video cassette, which is a higher quality than VHS. So what is he capturing there? They're capturing something that is not a physical object, or not a 767 anyway. Again, we have a photograph. We got the disappearing wing, which we see in those videos on the other side in the Luke Chesney video here. So it's not just in the video, it's in people's photographs. It's in the phasing out there in Fairbanks. Now, this is what's going around at the moment. We've got people altering the videos to make the plane more convincing, but also bring a conspiracy element to it, where they've adjusted the brightness on the front of the tower there, when that is normally in shadow, consistent with the sunlight, which you can go and check the direction, what it was on 9/11. But they've actually put the wing in, which should have been in dark shadow, but they've made the plane look more convincing. Very, very deceptive. This is the truth movement at work at the moment, putting this stuff out, because something is trying to prevent people from studying those planes very, very closely. Again, we've got the secret program admitted as being established in 1994 for the holographic projector for the PSYOPs. This is a desire of the military back in 1994. Published in the Washington Post. Again, they had a desire for using holographic technology, again for PSYOPs. Again, just blowing up there, tells you holographic imaging. So this actually was something John Lear spoke about, the holographic projector. And there's some couple of schools of thought regarding the plane, by the way. So I'll just run you through these documents. So it was admitted by the Pentagon that the holographic projections openly as part of its non-lethal weapons program, but since 1994, the program disappeared from view, and it was put into a black budget effort, and that was published in Defence Week. So again, it was even spoken about as early as 1991 in the Army's JFK Special Warfare Centre and School in late 91, disclosed it was looking to develop PSYOP hologram system. So, again, they're on record. This is a desire, what they wanted, military. So the school of thought is, was the illusion, the plane illusion, was it broadcast in from something flying alongside it, broadcasting the plane, which would have meant it was not a physical object at all? Well, this is possible because this video, again, which was put together by Matt Steffo, shows something that possibly could be part of it. You're going to see an object flying beside Very strange footage this is. Now, people say about registering, about that being a bird or something else. To be captured on that video, a small object like that, for the lens to register that object it's very tangibly something quite not as small even as a helicopter perhaps. It's travelling at a similar speed to the plane, when the plane was travelling at 586 miles an hour, which is completely impossible. So I'll just move on. Now, the other school of thought is, was we looking at something that was cloaking around a delivery system object, air vehicle, to create the illusion of the plane? Again, all very sounds unbelievable, but they were working on this stuff. This is the type of technology they were working on, and it's in a patent where they can put a plane or an aircraft volumetric image, ghost image, they call it in the document, into a desired space or thin air, used as a countermeasure, decoy countermeasures. We also have this deadly illusion, holographic missiles and laser camouflage coming soon. Need to knock the E off the soon there. We also have some very strange elements, which was, at the time of the 4 crashes, the Earth's magnetic field fluctuated and spiked. This also happened with the buildings disappearing. There was quite a lot of disruption going on in the Earth's magnetic field. And we've got it listed, shown there, plotted there. Quite a sharp dip there at 8:46 when the first plane hit. We also have, during the Pentagon incident, alleged crash, which, just to let people know, it didn't even register a seismic signal, a tangible seismic signal at the Pentagon. Now, very strange, because they described it as an electrical interference, disturbance, which is similar to what we're seeing in the Earth's magnetic field. So again, I'm just putting this out there. I'm not saying exactly what it is, but plane crashes do not cause the Earth's magnetic field to behave in this manner. And there we have at 10:03 and 10:06. What a lot of people may not know is that 10:03 is the official crash time of Flight 93. Yet the seismic signal, very weak signal, that was registered in Shanksville was at 10:06. Here we got like a dip in the Earth's magnetic field, some short spikes, downward trend happening between 10:03 and 10:06. So I just want to move on quickly to the implications for the technology. Now, this is why I believe it's being covered up. This is why you're having the remote controls plane put out there. When remote control planes don't have the wings disappearing, we've had the video fakery, that everybody's in on it. All the people who videoed, all the eyewitnesses are in on the conspiracy. I don't buy that. And plus, I have a friend in New York who seen the plane. So he's seen the illusion, and he said it went seamlessly into the building. Okay, so the implications for this technology, which they're huge, because it's got to be kept secret, and I think there's people trying to keep it a secret. So is this going to be used in another type, Project Bluebeam, down in the future? Possibly. So it could be a clear and present danger. So again, this was spoke about by Sergei Monast in the disclosure of information about Project Bluebeam, which we see. So we know the towers were turned to dust. Again, this is a big contention in the truth movement. But the evidence shows them towers did not hit the ground. WTC1 registered, I think it was a 2.3, and the South Tower registered a 2.1. Both of them had non-existent S&P waves, which means it was not kinetic. So it was the equivalent of the floor. So if you imagine on your bed, getting up off your bed and the bed springs back, that was what the rumble was in the ground. It wasn't through everything falling to the ground. Because when you look at the rubble pile, it's hardly above the lobby of the towers for each tower. It's very, very minimal. Paper survived. Now, again, this is being covered up, and people need to understand this technology is real, and this could be what they use in the future, because you change them planes to UFOs and you've got the buildings turning to dust. Potentially you've got an alien invasion or an alien attack or alien threat. Now, again, this is being spoken about in the papers, being spoken about online, in publications. You've got it here. By all accounts, they've set up a unit in the UK, the SAS, to deal with an alien threat, like a national security threat. Again, we've had all the UFO things with the Pentagon. Now, regarding that Pentagon video, potentially it could be showing that piece of technology that I've shown earlier, which was a decoy for countermeasures. They could have been filming that, the pilots. Again, this is the one I'm talking about. That could easily be that plasma-induced laser 3D volumetric ghost imaging. And they have it and they speak about it and they use it for decoys. It's also spoken about in the RAND Corporation because they're worried about China having it. Not that I think it's a global thing, so I don't think for 1 minute everything's separated. But it's mentioned in the RAND Corporation report that they have what they call illusion holographs or illusion holograms with sound. They can produce sound. And that's been proven. There's videos online. You can see the military can broadcast sound through plasma-induced lasers. So this isn't fairy tale stuff. This is, it's real. It's a real technology that they've been, probably 30, 40 years ahead than what we even have been presented with.
Mark, I apologise, but we are quite a lot over time.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'll just say about the film, then I'll just mention that, and you can, if you want to edit that in, you can. So anybody interested in this area, go and watch the film I was involved with that was made by Chris Hampton, and it's called 9/11 Alchemy Facing Reality. Thanks for having me on, Jeremy.
Just quickly, your Substack.
Yeah, it's 9/11 Planes Research. If you just type that in, you'll find my Substack. It's at substack.com, I think.
Mark Conlon, thank you so much for joining me in the trenches. I really do appreciate your time. This is an incredibly interesting topic.
Thanks for having me on, Jeremy. Appreciate it.